Welcome to the Thriving Artists Podcast, where we share strategies and support for artists to thrive.
We know that the art world can feel like a lonely place, and we want to provide a network of support, impactful strategies, and an abundance of encouragement to help you grow your authentic art career.
We're your hosts. I'm Jamie Smith.
And I'm Kaylin Butine, and we are also the co-founders of the Thrive Together Network, a community of female and non-binary identifying artists and artists who are caregivers.
We truly believe in community over competition, and we're so glad you're here. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Artists Podcast. I'm Jamie Smith, and I'm one of your hosts of this show, and I wanted to jump on here midsummer to give you a little creative pep talk. TTN, we take a break during the month of July to do our community sabbatical. So this is a time of rest or studio time or however members want to spend it, but we take a bit of a break, which is really nice. August is approaching, so I wanted to send out a little episode into the ether of some things that I've been thinking about and hopefully some inspiration to kind of move from waiting to action if you're stuck in that place at all. First, a little pep talk for you. I wanted to remind you that, sometimes we need to remember that no matter how our summer has turned out, you are an artist. Your art will always be there for you, and that is the joy and sometimes the curse of being an artist. Our art sometimes can loom over us, calling us back to the studio, which is hard when you're in a season of not creating, but it's a magical thing to know. As an artist, your art is always there for you. How amazing is that? In good times and in bad. So in May, I had an opportunity to do an artist talk. And that artist talk was really important to me. It provided closure for me about my most recent art show that I shared all about my fertility journey. So my series and the show was called Mother Time. And this show was all about the process of trying to get pregnant over the last 3 years with IVF and lots of other means to an end. And it was a really hard time, but I've learned a lot. And I actually put on the show for the 2022 TUS initiative, so our Taking Up Space initiative, which really pushed me to put on my solo show, which I think is the real power of creating a show for that initiative, because I was kind of pushed out of my comfort zone. And I started to really think about this idea of what my art could look like for such a heavy topic, for something so personal. And during this time, I started to create this visual metaphor of this idea of a waiting room. So I created a physical waiting room for the show, but I also was thinking about waiting rooms are kind of times in life where things are just outside of our control. I have found myself in waiting rooms before. Often grief or loss of losing someone can kind of put you in this uncomfortable feeling in your life of, I have no control. I kind of have to sit and wait and be with grief before I can really move on. And this visual metaphor, this place that I call the waiting room, has really helped me because my fertility journey was its own type of grief. I was in a lot of waiting rooms, actually in them, to do IVF and to do all the other doctor's appointments that are part of the medical journey. But I also mentally felt like I was in a waiting room. I was always kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. And all I wanted to do was control the outcome. But really, I had to sit and accept that this is where I was at. So for the show, for Taking Up Space, I created this installation piece. It was my very first time creating an installation, and I called it the waiting room. I designed toile fabric, and I got them printed with spoon flower. If you're ever looking to put your art onto fabric, that is the place to do. It was such a great experience. I uploaded my files, it got printed onto fabric, and it was my fertility story. I used toile as kind of this motif with Art Nouveau candles and needles and eggs and nests and more. And it was really, really neat to see that come to life. And then I upholstered it onto a love seat and lamps and this whole backdrop of this room. So I asked gallery goers to come in, put on a toile hospital gown, and sit on this toile love seat. And I kind of wanted this fabric to surround the viewer, to feel like they were really in it, because I think when we're stuck in waiting rooms and we're kind of stuck in life in general, we kind of only see those things around us. So when I was really wanting a baby, all I could see was newborns, magazines with celebrities having babies on them. And it really creates this place of this internal waiting room. You're just waiting for something to change, and it's how you see the world. I also included in this waiting room an antique cuckoo clock on the wall. And there was a speaker that was playing a ticking sound because it always felt like my biological clock was ticking away. And I think when we're stuck in these mental spaces of waiting rooms, it can feel like our time is not our own. It's just ticking away. So I really wanted to create this mental internal space I was constantly living in at this point and make it a physical one, and people could come into the waiting room. It was incredibly powerful. I find that waiting rooms in life are incredibly lonely. These times where we're stuck or we're having a hard time, sometimes people will never even know because it's all internal. So this waiting room was this physical space where people could come in and be with me there, which was amazing, but also hard because, of course, I told everyone a lot of personal things during this show, and I definitely think it's something to consider when you're creating something very personal, because once you open that door and allow people in, they're in. You can't take back that vulnerability. And during this time, I've thought a lot about the word acceptance. And I realized as a young person, I felt like accepting what was around me felt like giving up. I felt like accepting the situation around me was giving up my control. And well, it turns out control is not real, which has been a hard life lesson as an adult. And I realized that acceptance is sort of this personal mental choice. It's not pushing and thinking that you have control, which we don't. So I really meditated on this idea of acceptance. And I was really thinking about how acceptance brings a type of presence. It kind of brings us to this moment of facing these hard things, facing some of the disappointments, facing some of the failure that's around us at the time. And it's these big questions that I think kind of make us more powerful, and it helps us have this presence in life that I think can be really, really important as artists, because as artists, we're trying to be present, to take it all in and then create out of that. So I have thought a lot about how waiting rooms, not just my fertility journey or grief, how does it affect us as artists, as creatives, and this idea of waiting? And sometimes as artists, and I know I've done it, I've kind of created my own special mental waiting room. And usually it has to do with fear and the idea that maybe if I don't try, that will be easier than trying and failing. And I've been there. And I think excuses like, I will make that thing when I have more energy, or when I have all the right supplies, or my kids are older, or when I have more money, or when, or when, or when. And I've been there. And really, that is kind of creating our own mental waiting room. It's excuses to not make the art or not do the thing that we really want to do, because those things are often the scary things. I know for me, I have trouble sharing my work and myself on social media, and I always think it's a little bit safer to just not. And those are these kind of waiting rooms, these fear-based places we can put ourselves. So I wanted to make this episode to invite you to step towards your art today. Maybe it'll be baby steps, but you can open that door of the waiting room and maybe just have a look out there, because we want to leave these spaces. We want to step closer to our art. And I hope that maybe this visual, it really helps me as a visual person to think of this waiting room as a place, because these are just uncomfortable times in life where we really don't have control. And I love a good visual. So if you are feeling a bit stuck, if you are feeling that you're making a lot of excuses right now around your art, think about yourself in this waiting room and you don't want to stay there anymore. It's time to kind of accept, yeah, yes, this is a hard place. Feel that presence. Know that you're in a hard place, but maybe it's time to take a little step forward. Maybe it's time to actually grieve a little bit, feel those feelings, but eventually to open that door and kind of move on, because you can do it. Artists are the bravest people I know. You have trained your whole life for this. So if you're feeling those feelings, you can do it, I promise. I just wanted to, before I sign off, I don't want you to just be left in your waiting room alone. If you are ready to kind of move forward, this is a perfect timing because our virtual art residency with TTN starts mid-August. And you could join hundreds of artists and feel that creative energy of not being alone in your own waiting room. For the month of September, we all pick a studio project or a body of work or something that we really want to do. Usually that big thing that's kind of scary. We pick and we do it as a community, and we have check-in sessions every week. It's pretty exciting. So our art residency info session is on August 10th. It's 1 p.m. Eastern time or 10 a.m. Pacific time. And our link is in our Instagram bio or our newsletter. If you get that, you can sign up for our newsletter and get all the information and that link at thrivetogethernetwork.com. And it's really, really great because I know for me, sometimes these scary things, it can feel pretty lonely. And that's the thing with waiting rooms. We're usually there by ourselves. So unless you build your own like I did and make some toile and put it on the wall, you're kind of there alone. But with a community of artists, you're not. I also wanted to end and bring this moment full circle. So during this art residency month in September, I have actually gotten to leave my personal waiting room with my fertility journey. And in September, instead of making art, I will have made a baby. I will be welcoming a baby girl into this world. Possibly she will be another brave artist that will join our ranks, or maybe she'll be more math inclined like her father. But either way, I'm very excited. I've left my waiting room behind and it's on to the next chapter, on to the next one. There's, I'm sure, a waiting room ahead at some point, but for now, I get to enjoy and bask in the creativity of new life and all of those things. So thank you, as always, for listening to this podcast and supporting the work that Kaylin and I do at the Thrive Together Network. We hope to see you at the art residency this month, and it's going to be a great time. Make some work with us in September. As always, here at the Thrive Together Network, we are here for you, we are cheering you on, and we believe in the work you are doing as thriving artists.